to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
I like Mouse.
No, Mouse is fine.
There's 3 tiers of art. There's high art, there's pop art, and then there's low art.
Right.
And then there's Forces of Good and Evil.
Yeah, that is way down there. I will agree.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's another Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. You're welcome. I would like to welcome, of course, Twitless, who's typically here, and Tim and Mark.
Hello.
Hey.
Now, before we get going on the topic, which is, of course, the phenomenal success that is Kamen America, I want to send out a thing to those of you listening. If you liked the intro or you want to see something similar in the future, let me know. We're usually just going in here like a pirate radio, but Twitless thought, we should shine it a little bit, polish it, make it look a little something fun. So tell me what you think in the comments or whatever.
It's like we're a real podcast now.
I personally really like that intro.
Yeah.
Is it Eevee who did your art?
Yep. Pocket Eevee who did it. Yeah.
She's really good at caricature. I mean, that does look like you in a flattering way,
And also the art that's the thumbnail is hers as well. So
cool.
Yeah. In fact, if you go over to her channel, you can find it in the description. You can see a speed draw of the fan art that was the basis for the thumbnail. So
yeah, she does good work. If you guys are on Twitter, I don't know what her handle is. I know it has the word Eevee in it.
She's actually not on Twitter anymore. She's only on Minds.
Oh, no wonder. Yeah,
yes.
That's where I saw her.
Yeah.
Minds, yeah.
She got her Twitter handle struck for somebody claiming she wasn't black enough, I guess.
Ugh, I didn't know she was black.
Yeah.
That
was that was her name for a while too after she came back.
But Eevee is black?
Yeah. No, that not black enough for you.
Oh.
So, hopefully that wasn't too much of a secret.
Yeah, did I tell you the story, Matt? You know Brian Ball?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was black for a whole year.
Really?
Yeah. A whole year.
And he was like, we were talking on the phone. He said something about being black. I was like, "You're black?" He's like, "Yeah, why?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. I just didn't think that. I said, "Is that going to ruin our friendship?" I was like, "No."
That's amazing.
Yeah,
so
cool.
anyhow, that's the story, and we, of course, are here to talk about Kamen America. You guys have been doing amazing with this. You guys were topping the charts there on Amazon when you dropped there. You guys have the webcomic thing going. Tell us a little bit about what's been happening.
A lot of it's just luck, to be honest. I think that the Amazon bump happened because of just some guy. So we don't tell anyone to review our books like at all. We don't. You know how it is, Matt. We don't reach out to anyone to go on channels. People, if they want us, it's fine. But we're kind of boring, so we don't talk much. Well, what I like about just some guy's reviews is that he reviews the book after he gets it. He doesn't review the book before he gets it. So I think it helps us because it's like, no, the proof is in the pudding. That someone's read it, they like it, and then there you go. And I think the only thing that surprised us about the Amazon ranking was that he didn't even review the first book. He reviewed the third one. And I think people checked it out because we saw the numbers in real time and they were out of order. It was like Kamen America 3 had like X number of downloads. And then you saw Kamen America 1 play catch up because people were reading out of order. And I don't know. I personally think that's kind of weird because I don't read books out of order. I always start from 1 and work my way up. But afterwards, what happened was we hire a lot of Japanese artists. And the Japanese artists, their community talks. And they're like, what's this thing that everyone's drawing? And it's like, oh, this is a guy in America who hires some of us. And some of us do fan art.
You won't leave us alone.
Yeah. And so they read our stuff. And like for 2 months, the Japanese were actually like our #1 customers on Kindle. because they, a lot of them can't get the physical copies. So they're like, oh, let's see what this is about. And so we'll share some of those tweets sometimes, and they'll be like, hey, how do I get this book? Like, I want it. This guy, I think this morning there was a lady, and she tagged Mark in it and was like, how do I get this book? Like, I can't find it anywhere. And so we had to help her out.
Which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's got to be amazing to have people actually want something you make.
It's nice.
I was gonna say, could that lady not find it because it's not in Walmart?
Nah, it wasn't. No, it's not in Walmart. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's why. Okay.
I can comment on that joke. Mark, you just sit there and don't say anything.
Mark's bound by NDA. You can't say anything.
He's bound by the new district attorney. And so no, they can't. And that sucks for international customers. It's really the only way they can get it. Is they have to either back the campaign or wait for Antarctic Press to put a retail version out. But you were saying, Matt, about readers. Heck, we'll just be happy if we have like 50 readers, to be honest. As long as Mark and I can like break even on our work, which is like $500, we'll pretty much be happy.
That's awesome.
Anything else is just icing on the cake.
Well, we got some amazing engagement from chat.
Yeah. So Jim Tuner says, Tim's fans want comics featuring war, conquest, and the strong conquering the weak. When will he give it to us?
Yeah. They don't want strong female characters, quote unquote. Those three words. They want conquest. And,
the
nihilistic destruction.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one. Nihilistic destruction.
Yeah.
If there's anything that Kamen America, even Black Ops, is like the opposite of, there's it's a little popcorny, but it's 100% meaning through the whole thing. I love it.
Well, thank you. We do that on purpose. There's some people who obviously, like, if you look on comics YouTube, a lot of pushback against the big two and even like Image Comics. But one thing you always hear about is like, man, we want to turn the clock back and do things differently. Why don't we just have like big dudes with guns killing people and have like death and destruction? I'm like, I don't know. I can still get that like nowadays. Like, why are you guys so nihilistic? Why is everything like so brutal?
And it's like that's not really turning the clock back and doing something different. That's turning the clock back and doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I don't like that stuff. Like I was cleaning up my comic collection recently, and I was like, let me see what I used to read back in the 90s. I was like, dang, this is some edgelord stuff.
Yeah.
I liked this stuff when I was like 16, and I outgrew it when I was like 20.
For maybe Bone.
I think Mark likes Bone. I haven't read Bone.
Oh my gosh,
Bone
it's great.
Back in like 2005. No, that's not true. I read parts of it when it was serialized in Disney Adventures magazine in the 90s.
Was it?
And then I read the whole. Yeah, it was like big
gosh.
chunks of it were printed in color in Disney Adventures, and that's where I first read Bone. And then I read the whole thing when they released that like omnibus collection in like 2005.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And then I read that whole thing on a flight to Japan, and it was really good. But it's been since 2005, so I've forgotten probably most of it. But I just remember really liking it.
Yeah, I actually was thinking the other day. Earlier this year, I was doing a class, and I read through the first volume of Bone again, and it hit me about how like much quality it kept. And if it wasn't this thick, I would have read the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a doorstop if you have like the whole omnibus. Tim, you'd really like it. I know you have all this free time to read books that are like 1,000 pages, but.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a funny story about Bone. The entire reason I didn't read it was because I grew up with just reading Big 2 plus Ninja Turtles, essentially. And I always thought that independent comics were degenerate. And I remember the first time in class that I heard someone use the word boner, it was because of like Beavis and Butthead. And then I just remember like seeing Bone in the bookstore and being like, oh, it is like a pervert comic or something. So I never gave it a shot, to be honest.
Well, that's unfortunate because it's really good.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like if you compare it to the degeneracy that's out today, it's Lord of the Rings meets Walt Disney. And so it's actually a very clean book for the most part.
Twitless, Tim hates that.
You just made Tim like cringe.
Did I just screw up there?
Yes.
It
is an all ages high fantasy.
This is okay. It's okay.
Well, I mean, in terms of tone, though, because it has these, it marries the caricature art, this very cartoonish thing, with very high fantasy concept.
It's totally wholesome. It's perfectly good for like it's an all ages book.
It's not about boners, right?
No.
Okay.
There is some awkward sexual tension, but it's pretty PG.
Okay. I'll check it out. Do you have it, Mark? I can borrow it from you.
I haven't. No, I didn't bring it with me when I moved. It's one of those books where it's like, I've read it once. I really liked it. I haven't read it in 7 years, so I'll just give it away. I'll probably never read it again. And now it's 7 more years, and I want to read it again, and I don't have it. So you can get it on Amazon for like $15.99. Just get it's called like the Bone Complete Edition or whatever. It's in one paperback. It's really cheap.
Okay.
The black and white is actually, I enjoy the black and white better than the colored version.
I do as well.
I mean that's how Jeff Smith originally printed it, was in black and white. So that's kind of like how it's supposed to be read.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it is. I would call it an all ages accessible high fantasy. But
yes,
I mean so Bone was one of those Scholastic Book Fair comics back before Scholastic Book Fair became degenerate.
Well, it's so weird. Yeah, because Scholastic found them after. It's got this really weird history because it started off being this really plucky underground independent comic, and then the librarians discovered it, and then they took up the cause of saying we could market this as educational value, and so they've spun it more into the kids juvenile graphic novel section.
Well, and Alison Bechdel.
Oh, geez. Don't, Kevin.
The strange thing is this.
Why?
In the intro, you were talking about Mouse. That's actually where I bought it, was through Scholastic. I think it was the last book I ever bought because I was in 8th grade when we still had the Scholastic book fairs, and you had to get your parents' permission to get it. I honestly didn't know what it was about. I just knew it was like a comic, and you had to get, your mom's signature to get it. I was like, all right. And so, yeah.
Scholastic Book Fair was where I bought novelizations of movies like Batman Returns and Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, those were the best. And they came with sticker sheets too.
Yes, and like the full color photo inserts in the middle of the book. Yeah, like, oh damn, I want that.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah, I was too old by the time those were a thing. So.
You didn't get. I got Scary Stories 1 through 3 at Scholastic Book Fair, like every other kid in the 90s.
We were poor, but my mom bought an Animaniacs like Where's Waldo, like find the characters in the thing. Yeah, that was fun. That's my book fair experience. Anyway, we're drifting way off topic.
It's fun stuff though. But back to Kamen America. So you feel like a lot of it's just right place at the right time in the right venue.
I mean, yes and yes. Okay, so a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is just the right person. Because like I said, just some guy, whenever he reviews our books, we don't know if he's going to. We don't know if he thinks they suck. Whenever he does, we get a bump. And then the only person who like proactively will kind of give us a shout out is like Wes from Thinking Critical. And he does it because we're contributors. But for the most part, we rely on grassroots support. So that's part one. But, there is a part where there are business decisions that we make, and one of the primary ones was we're always trying to like innovate, and it's not like we're not inventing anything new. We're using old business practices, but it's just like no one thinks about doing them. I mean, one of them was, I remember telling Mark, like, hey, like our traction is slow. Like we're persona non grata on Indiegogo because basically that sphere does not like us too much, and we're growing, but it wasn't by leaps and bounds. It was like, all right, like 100 people here, then 200, 250, 300. Like it was very, very slow. And so I said, well, 2 things we're going to do. One, we're going to go Kickstarter because I asked 4 people and they all said you should go to Kickstarter. Marketplace is bigger. But the second thing is I told Mark, we have capital. What would happen if we lowered the price of our book to something so ridiculously low that we basically outprice our competitors? And he's like, how much? $10. And it's like, that's insane.
That's
like,
practical cost. Yeah.
But I made a pretty good deal with the printer after years of negotiating. They know that we can bring in our own customer base, plus we can refer other people. So we struck a deal with them. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions that we made, because a lot of people tell us, they're like, holy cow, you're selling a $10 hardcover book? Like, that's insane. And that, you know, sometimes they'll say, well, why don't these other people do it? I'm like, I don't know, go ask them. Like, we're nobodies. We're just hobbyists. We're just here to, I don't know, just get the book out in a way that we can still make a little bit of money afterwards. So, I mean, there are some business decisions. It's not all luck, but a lot of it's luck, especially because we're nobodies. We don't have any forward traction from anyone huge like in the beginning. We do rely on word of mouth for people to spread the word.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing too is like you didn't just jump into the hardcover, right?
No.
That was one thing. Is you're at $10, and then the next time it was the $10 hardcover. So it's one of those things where you've talked about on the show before about overperforming, about giving the buyers more than they expect in terms of the quality and
we surround ourselves with pretty sharp people. Like, here's a story of how we went into hardcover. So I was just gonna do Kamen America with like the holographic covers, because I mean they're nice. But Doug Ernst went over my head, and I guess he wanted to make me proud, because he was like, hey, I negotiated with the printer on my own without you. We're doing Soul Finder in hardcover. I'm like, really? And he showed it to me, and I was like, woof, like, dang, this is a good book. Like, how much do you pay for it? And he told me, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to them and see if I can negotiate like an even cheaper price. And that was like 8 months of negotiating, where I was like, hey, how much are you can charge for hardcover? They're like, like $5.50. I was like, oh, we can't do that. Can we get lower? Like, that's crazy. And they're like, well, why should we? And I said, well, based on my projections on Kickstarter, like, this is how many backers we're gonna get by the end of the year. Like, y'all are gonna make out pretty well if you do it at the price point I want it at. So we did back and forth, and finally it happened. But Doug is really good at that. What's good about it is that the guys who are not in the industry, I think it's because we've worked like retail, we're always like thinking of different ways to do things. And again, I've seen some criticisms of us where it's like, oh, they pretend they're innovating and not innovating anything. I saw so and so do it. I was like, yeah, no joke. We're using business models that other people use outside of like basically like comics. It's like business 101 or economics 101. So no, we're not really doing anything new. It's like, why don't you guys do this stuff? Because I mean, we're just using business practices that we think are pretty universally known, and we're trying to innovate. But that's kind of the beauty of being outsiders.
Yeah, I mean, people look at, Kamen America 4 right now, and they see the numbers that we've got, like, oh, so you guys are going to keep all the profits that you don't spend on fulfillment and shipping, right? And we're like, no, we roll that into the next campaign. That's going to go into Kamen America 5, and that's what's going to pay for the hardcovers, the custom boxes, the acrylic standees, maybe some more of those statues, the patches, all that, the other cool stuff. That's how we pay for that stuff, is with the money from the previous campaign. So no, we don't just take all the profits that we can and go and buy a house or something with it. We put it into the next campaign,
Yeah, Mark's seen my spreadsheets. They're scary.
I don't have that kind of a mind for figures at all. I really am impressed with anybody who can pull that off.
Doug Ernst will tell you, he and I both agree that the largest checks we've ever written in our lives were the printer's checks and the fulfillment checks. I mean, you're looking at like 5 figures. And, don't get me wrong, when people see 6 figures, oh, that's great. It's like, yeah, but you should see the math on the back end. Like, that stuff is scary. Like, we don't pocket all that money. Like, geez, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah, especially if you're looking at such a low, buy-in price, right? So that requires a little trimmership.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are things that we do that are experimental for sure. Sometimes they play out, sometimes they don't. Like, I was talking to Tyler Carpenter the other day about like NFTs. I tried to get into NFTs, and frankly, it's a whole different beast. I'm gonna have someone like basically tell me what to do. I sold one, and I made $250 in Ethereum, which is pretty good, but not enough to have me be like, okay, let me see more about this. It's too time consuming. And then we just did the webtoons thing, and so we have 16 webtoons episodes that are programmed and ready to go every Wednesday. And that's a time consuming thing, but that's actually paid off. I look at my analytics for Kickstarter, and it's like, oh, we're getting a lot of traffic from webtoons, which is good.
Which that actually is a good transition. It's something that I wanted to go ahead and talk about. Now, I did not read today's strip. I just did not have the time. But I read the previous week's, and that is some fun stuff that you guys have got going on there on the webtoons. And I've mentioned on my show before, I don't know if you've noticed it, that I'm almost jealous. Because you guys have taken an idea that we tried years ago and doing it backwards and better.
It's just luck, man. That's really all there is to it. I was telling Tyler Carpenter yesterday, we know a lot of friends who have very good works and very good books, and for some reason they just can't get eyes on them. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, if we had like a lot of viewers and we had a platform, we would do it. We would do anything we could to help. But
I think
like I said, I'm teasing mostly, but I mean, it's like, you have this book that's doing pretty well and that people are liking, that's getting this kind of traction, and then you have this webcomic, which of course it has got a built-in fan base. It's amazing. So what has been your experience on webtoons? How's that going?
I mean, we promote it as a supplement to the main series, the printed books, but it can also be read completely independently of it. So if you don't want to read the printed books that cost money, you can read the web series and follow the story along. I think we've written 16 or 20 chapters so far, 20 episodes, and it's a different way of writing than the main book, and it took me a little bit to get the rhythm down, not just in how many pages, what we're doing for story quote unquote arcs, but also how to do that vertical scroll panel. Tim had to guide me along quite a bit with that, so that I planned the panels out in the script in a way that he would draw them, because he's better obviously at visualizing these things since he's the artist. So they do get more intuitive as we go along, but they're a supplement to the main series. So one of the chief criticisms Kamen America Volume 1 had was that we rushed through some of Karlis' origin, because at the time we did Volume 1, we didn't know if there's going to be a Volume 2, so we tried to get as much stuff in there as possible. And yeah, we did have to skip over some segments. Like, we never told Karlis' first adventure as Kamen America. She goes from being Warhen to being established as Kamen America. What was her first day like? So that's the story we're telling now. Is just what happened on her first day as Kamen America. And we're going to go and tell stories about the earliest adventures of Misha and Kimiko and these other characters, and reestablish them for the webtoons audience, while also telling missing chapters in the main book. So people who read both get the full experience.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk about too, and I'll let you in on this in a second, Twitless, sorry. But like the tone that you guys have on the webtoon, it's a little different than the books, right? Not just the layout and all that kind of stuff, but you seem to be hitting a lot of those kind of tonal ideas and the feel that a lot of the successful webtoons already have, in a way that like you've got a product that's perfect for the market it's in, and I'm just really impressed with that. That's just great.
I was gonna get Twitless's comment in.
Which one?
I don't know. You were about to say something.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah. No, first off, I'm going to say I disagree. I'm going to bring some disagreement here. I disagree with Tim. It's you're not just lucky. You're being too modest. But let me say that I think you're right, actually, that there is a little bit of luck involved, but obviously you have a very a commendable work ethic. And as many people in comics know, just getting product out is like 90% of the battle, 9/10 of it, really, in terms of succeeding there. So you're already like, succeeding at a high level there. And the second thing I want to say is the fact that, lots of people, as you mentioned, you're right about this, I think too, put out quality work. But in terms of being successful, I think, in a media sphere, it's sadly not just about quality. It's about tapping into some sort of zeitgeist, into some spirit that people can really get behind. And some of that is kind of, seeing what the kids like these days, and your coloring style, your art style, with the kind of blend of, kind of quasi manga with, obviously some very heavy Western influences there. I think you're tapping into a zeitgeist or a spirit there that consumers are really reacting positively to. So I think that mixture, with obviously, a little bit of luck there, is really boosting you there. So I just want to, that I'm disagreeing with you, but it's a backhanded, it's just a way for me to compliment you a ton. So,
I forgot whose stream I mentioned this on. It must have been Tyler Carpenter's. So let you guys in on a little secret. Mark and I are kind of dumb. Like we're not clever at all. Like he never went to school for writing and I never went to school for art. So we don't know what we're doing. What we do know is that we basically just try to fill in vacuums. That's just been our shtick like this whole time. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we're afraid to make a political satire comic about the president because we're scared about losing our jobs. And Mark and I are like, well, we're two dumb guys. And honestly, our work doesn't even care about what we do. Why don't we do it? Let's do political parody. It's like, okay. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. You did that. And it's like, yeah, but we made money because we were the only people doing it. And looking at Kamen America, I'll tell you how this idea came about. We were working on Wall Might. I had this Warhand character, and it was like my most retweeted thing on Twitter. People were like, what is this? It's Warhand. Like, this looks really cool. And Mark and I were driving to Florida. It was a long drive. It was like 16 hours. I was like, man, I think people liked it because they're always complaining about how manly women look in comics. You want to do like a female comic, series that's a spin-off of that? And he's like, all right, let's do it. So there's some people who compare her to like other characters, and it's like, yeah, it's intentional. It's kind of like how Deadpool is basically like a pastiche of what's his name? Deathstroke. But he eventually became his own character. I mean, a lot of young people don't even realize that. It's like, did you know there's a reason why Slade Wilson and Wade Wilson sound very similar?
Right.
I had someone on Amazon, I think I know who it is, but someone who doesn't like us very much, posted under a Sock Puppet account, and they were like, this is such a ripoff. Like, her name is Carly Vanders. Like, it's a ripoff. And it's like, hey, idiot, it's called parody.
We know.
That's what that's called.
Yeah. And, it's intentional.
Yeah, and we were able to turn it into something kind of on its own. But
so
I mean, that's just the shtick, is that we find a vacuum and we say to ourselves like, well, how do we fill it? It's same with Black Ops. The entire reason we did Black Ops is like, man, these writers can't write Captain America or G.I. Joe. They suck. Like, it's not hard. I mean, we grew up with these books. It's like, why don't we do it with a handicap? We're gonna have like a mute rabbit be the Captain America character. And, that's how Black Ops came about. And people are like, oh, this is like really cool. So, I mean, I don't think anything we do is original. It's basically filling into that vacuum. And then the luck that comes with it is obviously very helpful too.
Well, and there is something to be said, though, on this side of this is it's not just, I mean, I think there's an aspect of prudence in looking for, where there's a need to fill, right? Like Neostar was talking about in the chat. The other is being able to really spot, the how to do it well, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things about Carly that is, I think that she did such a good job with her characters, is that she's sincere, and she's, genuine, but also flawed. And you've done a good job of demonstrating her flaws in a way that seem real and non-repulsive. They're just like, she's a human. She's a human who makes errors, and
she's filling in this. Speaking of filling in gaps, you're filling in the gap, that the gaping hole in my heart that was left when they ruined Ms. Marvel forever. She's gone. I held a private funeral for her in my head, because I don't think we're ever going to get the classic version that all the young boys fell in love with back in the day. And the one that. Oh, geez. I'm mind blanking. Why am I mind blanking? X-Men writer, Chris Claremont. Yeah, the one that Chris Claremont folded into the X-Men a bit. And it's like, she's dead. She's been ruined like beyond repair. And the movies have just like cemented that death. So Kamen America, obviously with that kind of, nod to like, this character is kind of very much like Ms. Marvel, the classic Ms. Marvel, who is now known as Captain Marvel, which leads to a whole bunch of canonical kerfuffle. But yeah. Good. Thank you for filling that hole.
There was so it's funny because Mark and I, neither of us grew up reading female-centric superhero books at all. And this is kind of the learning curve that we had, which was, what is the popularity of anime and manga? Because I didn't really watch it in the 90s and 2000s. What happened was in the early, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was very dissatisfied with comics, and I kind of didn't want to complain about it anymore because I was like, man, it doesn't seem like anything is happening. And a friend of ours, Eric, he's a guy that Mark and I know. He was like, you should get into anime and manga. I was like, nah, I hate that stuff. And he's like, nah, dude, I'm gonna give you 2 recommendations. You check them out, and if you don't like it, I'm not gonna bug you about it anymore. So he recommended One Punch Man and Kill la Kill. And Kill la Kill is insane. It's a completely crazy story and animation and stuff. But it enticed me enough to want to check out what else they had to offer. And at the time, they had a show on Netflix. It's still there. It's called Little Witch Academia. And it's all the girls. And I was just like, oh, this is like not up my alley. But after the first episode, like just watching the first 10 minutes, it captured a sense of wonder that you didn't really get unless you grew up watching like Ghibli movies when you were like in your teens, kind of that you're awestruck because the animation is beautiful, it's sincere, it's fluid. And it just dawned on me, you watch this whole series, which is about a girls' school of witches, and at the end of it, you're like, honestly, like you could replace the girl characters with like men, and you would probably still get the same characterization, but they're not afraid to touch on the feminine aspect. So the things that make girls, and it's not sexualized. It's just the fact that, it's like, they're cute, they're bubbly. You have like a tomboy in the group. You have the snooty, haughty girl who has her nose snubbed up in everyone. And I was like, okay, so a lot of this is starting to click into place. Like a lot of the things I've been reading online were making sense. Like, like waifu culture, where it's like, oh, who's your waifu? And I remember like whenever that would happen, I would be like, well, is this like a pervert thing? Where it's like female characters you just think are hot. And it's like, nah, it's a little bit more than that. It's basically like characters that have been created in anime and video games and manga that are so like idealized, not necessarily in a sexual way, but just in a character way, that it's like, oh, that's like my fictional wife or whatever. So I got Mark to watch Little Witch Academia, and I think that influences a lot of how we write Kamen America, is that they have to feel real to us. Like we have to hear their voices in our head. They have to be kind of based upon experiences that we've had with some of these types of characters, whether they be men or women. And I think that helps in actualizing it. I wouldn't know because I don't write the thing. It's Mark who does it. So all I know is I like it. I like the way he writes them. I rarely ever have to correct him on anything.
Yeah, that actually is a good question there, Mark. So women relate to each other differently than guys do in many, many, many ways. And yes, I might sound sexist. I don't care.
Canceled. We're canceled.
That's fine. But they just do. I mean, like groups of dudes and groups of gals, they relate to each other differently. Was there anything that you feel, because I feel like you're the girls in Kamen America are very authentic. Do you have any particular experience that kind of gave you that, or how did you prepare for those?
The thing is that if you ask a female audience what they want, how they want the characters to be presented, they're probably not going to give you an honest answer. Because I mean, if you look at the stuff like Kelly Sue DeConnick, who's a woman who writes comics for women, and women don't buy her comics. They say they love her books, but they never actually buy them. And you see that all the time. You just more have to be observant, like watch or read media that's it's targeted towards women, but is enjoyed by all audiences. That
Right.
means stuff like Little Witch Academia, Sailor Moon, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, for better or worse, stuff like that, where it's just, it has a universal appeal. Or boys stuff that's ostensibly targeted towards boys, that has a large female audience as well, like Teen Titans,
Right.
Adventure Time, things like that. And like, okay, there's something about these pieces of media that are attractive to both sexes while also cultivating a large female audience. How is it portraying its characters? What is it about about that that's unique and special, that's being approved by everyone? And so I look at stuff like that, and I just try to write mostly the lesson is just write your characters sincerely. When someone is acting awful and is unlikable, don't make them awful or unlikable unless they're supposed to be the villain. Don't be tone deaf with your characterization. Just separate your ego from it. Don't put a self insert as the main character, because then you're going to put your ego onto that character and they can never be wrong, and you're going to have all sorts of you'll be tone deaf with that character. Just these basic things, and you end up with a story that everyone likes.
And one thing that I think is important on that aspect too is of the idea you're talking about, the idea of don't make your characters unlikable. But there are definite moments in especially volume 3 where Karli is a little bit unlikable, where she's not being.
Everyone is sometimes.
Well, and that's the thing about it. That was authenticity, right? There was a learning experience that she had to go through.
That's the thing too, is that. I did like those writers' workshop streams on the Bunderdome, and then several on Thinking Critical. And one of the things I talked about with characterization is that if you can have your character be wrong and do bad things, but you have to call them out on it. The other characters and the narrative itself have to recognize when your character is doing something wrong, or being a jerk, or being incorrect in a situation. Otherwise, it looks like the story is ignoring this problem to uplift this character. I did a stream on the Bunderdome. No, it was on Thinking Critical, and it wasn't a writer's workshop one, but it was just talking about this weird thing going on in kids media, where all these kids cartoons on like Disney Channel and Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, they were all ending with mass genocides, and the narrative would never address it as a bad thing. The main character who committed genocide, like Star versus the Forces of Evil.
I was just gonna say Star versus.
Yeah, okay. Ends with Star genociding an entire race of magical creatures that aren't evil. They're just a race of creatures, and she kills them all in the last episode. And all the characters like, "Good job, Star. You did what had to be done. Like, you had no choice. You saved the universe." And like, no, she didn't. She just killed everybody. This is really bad.
My hero.
Like Gravity Falls, where Mabel causes Armageddon at the end because she doesn't want Dipper to go and study with go follow his dream and study like the paranormal with his uncle. So she causes Armageddon, and at the end, everybody apologizes to Mabel. And Dipper's like, "I'm sorry, Mabel. I'll never follow my dreams again, and I'll do whatever you tell me whenever you want me to do it." It's like, thank you, Dipper. You've really matured. The narrative is not aware of how terrible this character is.
So that was like the last season of Parks and Recreation. They did the same. They did the same thing to make Leslie Knope be, the retired president of the United States. Everybody else had to just fail. Except for Leslie.
Well, Tim, you've seen Parks and Rec. Is that true?
Yeah, the last season's not that good.
No, it's shit.
Oh, jeez,
it's pretty bad.
Yeah, there's definitely a big difference between having a likable character do an unlikable thing and making an unlikable character supposed to be your protagonist, because that basically shows you the moral tenor or compass of your entire narrative, as opposed to just that character, right? So if you have a universe, right, and it's like, here's my good guy, and he's really obnoxious and he's always right, and at the end he kills a bunch of people. I've made this unlikable. I've made these things that in real life would be heavily unlikable, but through the story, I've basically told the audience, you're supposed to like this because of how the narrative is set up. It means that one of the main problems that a lot of people have noticed in the mainstream comic books from the big two is the fact that the moral compass of the entire universe is like, it's not even just a couple degrees off where you could almost forgive it here and there. It's like inverted. It's the opposite. It's like all the things that freedom, truth, beauty, the rest of it. It's like, no, those things are wrong. What's actually right is ugliness and lies. And it's
Neo Star has the correct term for it. It's moral relativism. It's the moral of every episode of South Park is like, oh, you have a strong opinion about something? Wow, you're stupid. Everyone knows that there's no right or wrong, only shades of gray. The truth always lies in the middle. Oh my God, you're so stupid. It's every episode of South Park, and it's like, okay, yeah, like it's really hip to not to be a fence sitter and to never have an opinion on anything.
I do appreciate South Park will actually call out though the nonsense of a lot of.
Well, they used to, but then they kind of just turned into a propaganda wing like everybody else in the past couple seasons.
Did they?
Yeah,
okay.
They got pretty bad.
Okay. Back to Kamen America from South Park.
Yeah, but you're right. Like in Volume 3, we did particularly want to have Karlis. We wanted to show Karlis' ego on display and have her, not necessarily just taken down a peg, but to have her come to the realization that, oh, I've been wrong. So when she gets into that fight with Sylvia in the middle of the book during the second act, she's harbored these this misunderstanding of Sylvia, and Sylvia has as well, where they've just hated each other for years and years, and they kind of realize at the end that they don't have a good reason. They just hated each other for so long they can't remember why they hated each other in the first place.
And that was one of the things. That was one of the things that I really appreciated about that too, is because I'm reading it right, and I'm like, oh man, that Sylvia she's just a bitch, and I'm going along with it, and I'm on Karlis' side, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, she's being needlessly aggressive. I mean, that was a long time ago, and oh my God, she's wrong.
That's the other thing too, is like so many, like every cartoon has, I think the character trope is called the rich bitch. It's like the queen bee, the rich girl, the alpha cheerleader. Every cartoon has one of those characters. They're such a cliche, and they're always bad. They might have an episode, where they turn over a new leaf, or like the queen bee will realize like, oh, I should start being nice, and maybe they'll start being nice, or maybe it'll be one of those cartoons where everything goes back to the status quo the next episode or whatever. But with Sylvia, what we wanted to do was that was the misunderstanding of her character from the beginning. She was never a bad person. She sometimes could rub people the wrong way, like when she's helping Karli by giving her that Art Nouveau book. She's genuinely trying to help Karli, but is coming off in a way that seems condescending. But that doesn't mean Sylvia is a bad person. It's just this misunderstanding, this misassessment of her character. And that's what we wanted to go with her, is try something different with her.
And she can be lacking a little grace and still be, well intended. And
that was one of those
things that I really thought there's a social stratification issue between these two girls. That is keeping them from communicating correctly, and I thought that was a really fun take.
That reminds me of Stan Lee. I was reading a memoir of his, and he said it's so weird to think about how this has turned out, right? But a lot of what Stan Lee was doing early on was he was basically doing the same thing you guys were doing in a sense, which was what holes can I fill? What niches? What things have not been done? Teenage superhero who's not a sidekick. Family that doesn't get along. And then one of them, he said, you know what? I'm going to do military industrialist, a rich guy who makes money off of the military. I'm going to make him a hero, and I'm going to make him likable. And that was Tony Stark. Iron Man, but for all you kids at home, but who haven't seen the MCU, so I don't know who I'm talking to. But it's just so funny because Stan Lee basically said, I'm going to make a military industrialist my hero, and I'm going to make people like them, or make people like him. And obviously, he's one of the most popular superheroes today. But nowadays, the way things have come, Iron Man is now considered relatable for being the opposite of what he started out as. The first movie, of course, he comes right out and says, we're not making weapons anymore. Weapons are bad. I repent of all my military industrial ways. And it's just kind of so funny because it's the absolute opposite. When you read those early Iron Man issues, and it's just like reveling in I am making, tanks for the army. Yay.
Yeah, like I'm a freaking rich badass. Like, isn't this cool?
Right.
And he wrote him in character where it's like, nah, that's just how he's gonna be. I've said this online several times, but Sylvia is actually my favorite character that Mark came up with. So that's completely Mark's creation. But it's funny because she follows in that it's called the haughty noblewoman. It's a trope in anime, and I think that the reason I like it is it's because it's a straw man that doesn't exist in real life. I'm like, in real life, I've met a lot of girls who are, for lack of a better word, like bitchy and catty, but they're almost never like good people. They're always like mean girls. But in anime, a lot of times you do have that character, and they're a straw man because they're obviously the foil for typically another female protagonist. But you find out later that they're not as bad as they appear to be. And so they become a very easy vehicle for teaching lessons on like judging books by their cover, so to speak. But one thing that we did do differently for Kamen America is that the 4 girls, actually 3 of them, represent one of the 3 classic cosmological virtues. So Misha represents truth, Kimiko represents goodness, and Sylvia represents beauty. Now, the catch is they're so strong in each of those fields, they're lacking in other ones too. So, for example, Misha is very blunt. She'll always tell you the truth, even if you don't like it, but obviously that can be a detriment to her. But she's like kind of a tomboy, so she's not exactly like the prettiest, even though your mileage will vary on that. Sylvia is all like pretty much superficial. Like it's a superficial type of beauty. And the part of her that shines is kind of buried inside. But to a lot of people, she rubs them the wrong way because, like, can I trust this person? And that was the entire thing between Karli and her was, well, I don't trust her because she doesn't come across as anything but a beautiful, like, rich, prissy girl. So she lacks in that truth department. And where Kamen America, where Karli comes in, is she's supposed to be representative of a little bit of each of those things. Truth, goodness, and beauty, which through antiquity, through classical antiquity, to through Christian civilization has been considered like the 3 things that you look for in terms of art. So there is a meaning to it that we're writing into the characters. So that's a little bit of a tidbit for your listeners.
I tell you what, that makes the intro seem particularly appropriate, Tim. Well, thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hooray! It all fits.
Yeah, it all fits together. I planned it.
We were planning this all along. The best produced show on the internet.
We didn't just luck into it.
Made in the basement in Nebraska.
Yeah. Hey, I listened to your Stan Lee thing last week. You guys did pretty good.
Oh, that was a fun one. That was a fun one.
Yeah, Captain Cummings and Sick Doug.
Oh yeah, Sick Doug was before the thing. He was just a little background. He was like, I'm just going to sit here and nod every once and again and try not to cough on the microphone. I'm not feeling good at all.
Yeah.
But man, about 20 minutes in, he was like, and another thing.
Yeah, he did good. He had the Novid. And I remember because he had called me earlier that day. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this thing this evening. I was like, just put your cough mic on, and I think you'll do fine.
Yeah. He did. He was fine. It was a good show. It was a good show.
Yeah, but so Twitless, you bring up a good point, and this is something that I bring up all the time when I talk about manga and anime. The way I find stuff to watch and read is you just give me the craziest title, and if it's manga or anime, I'll read it just based on the title alone, because they've gotten so brazen that you don't have to summarize the plot. They tell you what the plot is in the title.
Right.
It's like I got run over by a truck and got resurrected as a porta potty. I'm like, I'm gonna read that, and I'm betting it's gonna be better than Batman. And then I read it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's better than Batman.
I don't know. From the last time I tried reading Batman, that wouldn't have been much of a challenge.
Well, it's like this. So for the people who are aspiring creators out there, Twitless brings up a good point. It's like, here's what you do. You do a Mad Libs thing where you're like, all right, here's my character. He's a plumber, and he's also a male stripper, and he has to fight I don't know, like ghosts.
It's a Chippendale.
Yeah. And you gotta stick with it, like no matter how ridiculous it is. Like, and then the last thing that you roll is like, is he a bad guy or a good guy?
Why did you just put this image of this super buff, like he's Mario, but he's only wearing his overalls and he's wielding a plunger and he's on a. I have the most vivid image of this. Thank you.
He's fighting the Big Boo, and the Big Boo's like, this is gross. I don't want to fight you.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what you do, is you just commit to the character, because the character, no matter how you might feel about them, they must exist like as their own person, regardless of how you feel about like the military industrial complex or like an alcoholic or whatever. If you think about like Bender from Futurama, it's basically like, all right, we got to go through all these seasons with a character that's a literal alcoholic, and we got to stick with it. So I think that, I don't know, I'm not the writer, Mark's the writer, but he does a pretty good job in terms of having the characters be realized in his head and just sticking to their characterizations.
So, Mark, you need to now make a script with Tim's pitch of the plumber stripper. You can call it pipe. You can call him pipe cleaner.
Oh my God.
What are you talking about? I got 5 volumes of that in the back burner ready to go. Okay. Waiting for Tim to draw it.
I'm here to clean your pipes.
Your pipes are haunted. I'm gonna go exercise them.
Well, I mean, I am the writer, but Tim is also my first editor, and basically my only editor. So, I mean, he's my co-plotter as well. So before I even write the script, Tim and I first go have a back and forth where we hammer out the plot summary. And then I break up that plot summary into the page breakdown. So what happens on page 1, page 2, page 3, etc. Then I send those to Tim, and Tim gives me back any notes. And then once we're good with the page breakdowns, I write the script. So by the time I send the first draft of the script to Tim, sometimes he doesn't even say that there needs to be any edits. Usually, if there's no big problems with it, which there never are, because we figure out all the big plot twists during the page breakdowns and plot summary portions before I actually write the full script, that sometimes Tim will just like, okay, and if he'll make running changes as he's drawing, as he's drawing the page, like something on the script isn't working, and he edits it that way. So that's one of the reasons we're so productive and we can get so much out so quickly. Is because instead of having me write like a full first draft and then Tim gives me like a whole bunch of like red notes and I have to completely rewrite the script from the ground up, and that just takes another like 3 weeks or something. Like, no, it's better to get that stuff out of the way during the plotting portion rather than the scripting one. And it's so much more efficient this way.
Yeah, that's a really interesting workflow. It's really great when you can because comic book workflow is, I think, one of the things that really can make and break a project. And the faster and the more in sync you are with your collaborator, the faster you can get your product out, and with the least amount of changes and so on. So it sounds like the two of you have you're really in sync, and that's really just fantastic for a creative endeavor.
Yeah, we're both dumb. It helps a lot. Hey, I'm gonna address the chat real quick. We got some friends in here. Got Bill Williams. This is the guy, jack of all trades. He's the writer for Punchline, not the DC version, the original Punchline.
Oh, that's right.
The good Punchline.
Yeah, through Antarctic Press. And then we got our buddy Jim Tuner in here. I haven't seen you in forever, Jim. I'm hoping you're enjoying yourself. And Star Productions as always. And then Scribbles and her husband, Rangemaster Dan. I miss you guys. They're our friends from Texas, and we used to hang out quite frequently, especially this last year. So they're hanging out with the Iconic Comics crew. Wish those guys good luck from us. I'm just waiting for them to start up their fulfillment. They had to close down shop a little bit because someone in the crew got sick with the same thing that Doug and I got, and so we hope he has a speedy recovery. But from what they told us last week, they're like, "Nah, we'll be up and ready to do fulfillment again soon." I was like, "Don't kill yourself, we're ahead of schedule right now, so everything is good." And then who else was in chat? Nicholas Mueller. Yep. I think he has a campaign coming out soon called The Sun King, but he also worked on Demon Hunter Raven. He's a cool guy too, so I want to say hi to him as well.
He's my favorite Tomato Lord.
Favorite what?
Tomato Lord.
Tomato Lord.
So I always make this joke because there were a couple streams where he was he was drawing in like his basement, which I think is like one of the quieter places in the house. And he had this whole like shelf full of just like jars with like, you know, red stuff in them. And I was like, I'd like to pull his leg on it and just, you know, tell him he's in the tomato dungeon and make a bunch of tomato jokes. But it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, we've had our nightly Reese disconnect. This is something of a tradition here on the Mattriarchy, where Reese forgets to. Yeah, I know. Reese forgets to plug his computer in, or like the power goes out in Nebraska or something.
Well, it froze on him for a while. He was like in the middle of a laugh, and so the screen froze, and he looked like kind of like all psychotic, and then he disappeared.
He has to replace his AAA batteries.
Yeah, it was really funny because we were someone was talking, and like half the laugh came out in like at the wrong moment.
Yeah, Mark was like, yeah, and then Tim and I, we always get together before I start the scripting, and
right,
so funny?
That wasn't the joke.
Oh gosh, so he's gonna come on in probably like 5 or 6 minutes, and he'll be you know, really mad at whatever.
Well, okay, so while he's gone, I'm gonna tell you the thing that people were talking about a while ago, where they're like, "Oh my gosh, Twitless, you're gonna make Tim mad." So
What landmine did I inadvertently step on?
It's not a landmine. It's a piece of advice I give people, and I say it a lot. It's how not to market yourself.
Oh, that's right. Oh, don't say
X
it's this
Y.
X meets
Never
Y.
say it's X meets Y. I was like, Twitless, you're smarter than this. No, don't say that. They're like, hey, I'm gonna sell you on Bone. It's a Bone meets Lord of the Rings. I'm like, it's Twitless. That's not how you sell it.
Yeah, it's there he is. Hey Reese, what'd you do wrong this time?
He says he has to crap.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess bathroom break. No. Okay. Yeah. I made the mistake of X meets Y. It was. Oops. Well, I wasn't. To be fair, I wasn't marketing my work.
That's fine.
I was marketing Jeff Smith's. So you know. Yeah.
That's why I didn't call you out on it.
Yeah. Okay.
I was like, all right, Twitless, you're gonna try and sell me on someone else's stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't do the X meets Y. When I'm marketing my stuff there. No, it's It is cartoonish characters married to high fantasy. Okay. So it is the perfect marriage of cartoonish fun, action, and even slapstick comedy married to the lore, tone, and serious plot structure of a high fantasy.
It is interesting because like the way the Bone characters are drawn is almost like out of a newspaper comic strip, but every other character is drawn, like you said, like a high fantasy book. So like the humans all look like anatomically proportionate, and then like the monsters are really detailed. There's dragons, like the nature is all really well done. But like Phone Bone and all them are drawn like it's like I don't know if it's Hanna-Barbera characters like
Pogo
stepped into
Pogo
stepped into something like that.
Jeff Smith was heavily influenced by Pogo. If you're familiar with it, which Pogo is a fantastic comic strip.
Walt Kelly's comic, it's really famous.
And so basically, Jeff Smith heavily influenced by Pogo. And if you look at the actual character of Pogo with how his face structure is,
just like Phone Bone.
Just like Phone Bone. And so he's drawing a lot from that, cartoonish tradition. And then, like I said, he does a lot of, it's kind of like, I would also compare it a little bit if you like Tintin. Because like, how in Tintin, a lot of the characters are more cartoony, but the backgrounds are very detailed in their rendering. A lot of Bone is like that. The characters, the human characters are a little bit more realistic, but they're still pretty characterized. The Bones are very heavily because they're actually from another place that's just pure cartoon, essentially. But the backgrounds for the valley is nothing but gorgeous renderings of nature.
Tim's never watched it or read it, but visually it reminds me of the Moomin anime from the 80s that I really liked. That was really, really popular in Japan, where like all the background paintings and architecture is like something out of like Ghibli. It's very lush and very detailed. But then you got Moomin, who's just like this very crudely drawn hippo kind of looking thing. And it's really cute and it's really simplistic. But you have these cute, simple, almost Sanrio-esque characters existing in a world that's so lush and detailed, it's almost photorealistic. But that's kind of like what Bone looks like is that sort of thing.
But did I redeem myself? Did I sell it a little better?
Yes, that was great.
Okay. All right, awesome.
Matt says he's restarting his PC. He says it locked hard on him.
All right, so while we're waiting, I did have an interesting point because in volume 1 of Kamen America, one thing that I was struck as that I thought was interesting is how you guys actually worked in a bit of political commentary. I would not call Kamen America Volume 1 a political book. But I was surprised because, there's some messaging, there's some counter messaging, and there was a lot of Easter eggs that for people who are more, I guess, politically savvy could definitely pick up on. So one of the biggest complaints that people have made, one of the biggest debates, actually, let's phrase it that way. One of the biggest debates is, politics and comics. And so the approach that you took in Kamen America is definitely not to shy away from those types of conversations. But I never felt like you guys were preaching so much. If you guys could talk a little bit, I'd love to hear about kind of your approach to integrating your worldview into your work.
I think so the perspective that we're coming from is it's not a political book, but if there's any politics in it, it's the politics of morality and virtue. And I don't think those are things to shy away from. I mean, we live in Arkansas and I lived in Texas for about 6 years, and your everyday person that you encounter, like at Staples or Office Depot or the supermarket, Walmart, wherever, they're like, quote unquote, normal. I mean, you talk about the stuff you read online, like, pronouns and stuff. And a lot of them are like, what are you talking about? Like, that's crazy talk. So your average person is kind of unplugged from that. And I think that this is, it's not my philosophy, but it does come from kind of, I guess, a Catholic or Christian background, is that you're just going to have universal truths. There are things that you can try and deny because it's the fad at the time. But the reality is that the human heart is programmed to seek certain things out. So, for example, like in volume 1, from the very first page, I mean, this is something that we crafted intentionally, was this idea of, well, what if you have a girl who just wants to do girlish things? Like, they just want to play with Barbie dolls and bake cakes and sew. And then you have like basically an authority figure telling them, like, well, you can't do that because that's reinforcing like things that you're not supposed to do. Well, again, like the people that we hang around with and the people we see every day, your average Joe who's in the supermarket, they look at that and that's not a political statement. That's just like, yeah, like
just normal life.
It's just normal life. And so there's this guy, this hater, and I think I know who it is, but like on Amazon, he was like, this is just a super political book. It's just like super political. And someone replied to like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no politics in this book. It's just, they're just telling you like, look, if you're a girl and you want to do girlish things, I mean, heck, the irony about it is that if there's anything political about it, it's like, nah, let them do kind of what they want. There's nothing wrong with the feminine embracing those aspects of femininity that that accentuate their character. And so we have that in there, but the other thing we do have in there that is slightly political, but I don't even think this political. I think that if you're just a normal human being, this is just like par for the course. Is there is kind of an anti-corporatism stance.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, yeah, and we know it from personal experience. We've been in these like boardroom meetings where we've been with committees where people are making stupid decisions, and it's like, are you guys listening to yourselves? Like, this is dumb. This is what happens when you get a bunch of people in the room who are so disconnected from reality that they make decisions that are not good for even the brand that you're looking at. I was listening to some podcasts about like Disney shareholder meetings, and they're hysterical because it's like, nah, this is what the people want. Like they want us to increase the price of theme park admission. I'm like, you guys are idiots. Like, what world do you live in where you think that people want prices to go up? And they mean it wholeheartedly. So it's kind of like the RoboCop angle. Like when you're a kid and you watch RoboCop, you're just like, this is so cool because it's the cop that just kills people with like an automatic handgun. But then when you watch it as an adult, you realize it's a satire.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, the whole thing is a satire. It's a satire on violence. It's a satire on corporate America. It's a satire on
like Starship Troopers is very
Starship
much
Troopers is like that too. It's like a running thing with Paul Verhoeven and his action movies. So we put that stuff in the book too, based on personal experience, where it's like, nah, kid, you gotta do what's hot. The hot thing is big box stores and chickens. And that's how you sell. That's the whole point. You got to make sure to sell yourself. And so, I drew on some personal experience in terms of like things that I was aware of. And I was like, this is stupid. We're going to put this in the book because I feel that if we think that this frustration can be channeled into something funny. And the reception to it has been pretty good. They're like, oh, man, like the villain in the story isn't even the monster she fights. The villains are the people that you can't just slug them, right? Like that isn't that the point of growing up, is that you have bullies when you're a kid, but when you grow up you still have bullies, except the problem now is that they're in like bureaucracies and HR. And I don't think that's a political statement. That's just reality for like the average person.
Yeah. So Mark, I think you were gonna say something to that as well.
If I was, I forgot what I was going to say, but it probably wasn't important.
Well, maybe I can prompt it off of something that I noticed, because, like I said, it's interesting because one thing I noticed that was it wasn't preachy, but it was definitely kind of a little bit of what I would call counter messaging. Was I think it's Vicky, the character of Vicky, who notices talking about the glass ceiling and how things have kind of culture has shifted so far that it's almost like that message is lost a lot of its weight, I guess.
Yeah, it's everybody. You keep seeing all these news reports, where it's like, oh, the first minority of whatever kind in this field, in this position, elected on this day at this hour, where we have to compartmentalize the achievement so much in order to make it an achievement, when it's just realized like it's just commonplace now for women to have these jobs and for minorities to have these jobs, for people to be in this status. It's not 1965 anymore. These so-called glass ceilings, they were broken a long time ago. We're never going to have at least the perception of equality if we keep segregating people every time they make an achievement, just so it sounds like an achievement. And that's the kind of thing where, Vicky's backstory was that she was made to go into STEM fields in the sciences because she was told she needed to break the glass ceiling of women in the sciences. And so she went and got the degree, got a job at a university lab, and her entire, all of her coworkers are women. And she realizes like she didn't really accomplish anything, not something special. She wasn't the first in her field. She wasn't a pioneer. That had all been conquered a long time ago. She was just basically made to feel like she was being oppressed, or that the world was out to stop her from achieving certain things, when that's just not the reality of the world anymore. We're just made to feel like it is.
So you would say that it is commonplace for
yes.
But that's the type of thing that I thought was interesting, because in current comics, one of the things that is at the heart of that political debate is not just having messages that you believe are true. It's how those messages are communicated to the reader. And one of the things that's so frustrating that I've seen, did you see the Colossus speech recently that he makes about jokes? And jokes aren't, you should be
jokes
careful.
Aren't funny.
Jokes are dangerous. Did you see that one? It's
no, I'm sure it's just cringy and awful.
I'll have to see if I can pull it up. But basically, it's Colossus going on. It's a single page, but it's nothing but panels of it's nothing but word balloons. So it's like 1,000 word balloons, and it's just a TED talk on why jokes are dangerous and they can lead to genocides. And it's like, so if for years, comics have always they've often pushed the worldview of the author, but here we have it where it's just like, pull out your text.
Just a lecture.
Yeah, pull out your textbook and put a lecture on the page. with like no action on it.
Well,
And it's yeah.
The old joke and the reaction from the person who doesn't like it is like the old joke is like, how do you know when you're in a feminist bookstore? Because there's no humor section. And then like the woman will respond like, that's not funny. And I have a great sense of humor. You know, it's like you just proved the point, you know, when someone makes that joke and you go, that's not funny. Like, there you go. And so when you're making like you're writing a lecture in a comic book telling people why jokes aren't funny, like, oh, I didn't know jokes aren't funny. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, jokes are dangerous. We have these people like, what was the news today about Dave Chappelle saying that his new stand-up special went too far. Now Dave Chappelle can't make jokes anymore. Family Guy was like the edgelord show, right? That always pushed the boundaries and was as politically incorrect as possible. And even they just recast Cleveland because they need to follow the new political correct mandate that all cartoon characters have to have voice actors that match their ethnicity. So even like Family Guy, who built their entire empire off of being politically incorrect, are now just like bowing to these political correct standards. And well, you know, they're all going for the jokes aren't funny attitude anymore. Comedy's dead.
Well, I mean, and in fairness, like, I mean, that's the one thing that I always go back to. Like, Family Guy wasn't politically incorrect. They were the right kind of incorrect. They follow the political narratives perfectly.
The Bill Maher, the Bill Maher style.
You know, family is stupid, traditions are stupid, all this stuff is stupid. Except us, we're the smart ones.
Okay, so I got this pulled up. Mark and Tim, tell me what you think of artistically of this Marvel comic as Colossus.
It's white space with text.
As Colossus tells Kitty, it always begins as a joke. Listen to me, both of you.
Don't read the whole thing, for God's
I'm not.
sake.
No, we'll be here all night. But
yeah.
Mark will never write like that.
Good Lord. I mean, Tim gives me a hard time saying that my scripts are too wordy, and he always has to prune them when he's doing the lettering. Yeah. But my God, Tim, I've never been this bad.
Page 4 of volume 4 was pretty bad.
Oh, eat shit.
I'm scared that people are going to get it, and they're going to compare it to this page and be like, look at this hypocrite.
This is terrible. Like when you can't even afford to put art on your page because you want to put so many words. Like, good Lord, that's like Bendis. I feel like Bendis is the guy who ruined comics.
I call this Brian Michael Bendis disease.
It's
a terminal case.
Was that so? Like older comics, like Chris Claremont era comics, and even going back to like Stan Lee era comics, you know, they would have a lot of words, a lot of purple prose, and just excess dialogue. But the characters would be doing something while they were talking. Like Psylocke would be delivering a jump kick and also like
monologue,
a 5-paragraph thesis, you know?
Right.
But at least she'd be doing something. She'd be kicking Magneto in the face or whatever. Like this, like Bendis is the one who pioneered the people having those long monologues while just sitting around in their pajamas for 10 pages, you know, in the living room and not doing anything. And that's the worst cancer that has just infiltrated comics, and I put it all in the feet of Bendis.
And a lot of what it comes to, and I agree with Bendis with that Bendis thing entirely. I actually got the chance to read Powers for the first volume for the first time, just to see if it was something that I've never read anything by Bendis like that, like long term I liked. Right? Mm-hmm. Like even his Spider-Man stuff. It's just Stan Lee's Spider-Man with extra words. That's all it is. And it's exactly the same beats, exactly the same moments. They just have more crap in between. And it's just so folk were like, no, you got to check out Powers, man. Powers is really good. And I'm like, okay. And so I read the first volume of it, and it could easily be a third of the length and get the same story in there. There's that much fluff. And even the art was copy and pasted to make room for all the words.
I kind of like Powers, but I'm not you're probably right. It's been a while since I read it. I think the thing I liked about Powers was more of the premises, the premise behind the story.
Yeah, the concept is great. Just needed somebody else to write it. Okay.
What was it? It was some Secret War that I think Bendis wrote a long time ago. Not Secret Wars, the one from the 80s. I mean Secret War, the miniseries from like 2005 or something. I think Bendis wrote that.
I think so.
And I remember liking it the first time I read it, but I like it for the art, that really nice painted artwork. Tim, who did Secret War?
Gabriel Dell'Otto.
Dell'Otto's art was great. I didn't pay much mind to the writing, and I tried to go back and reread it, and it was that Bendis style dialogue of just nonstop back and forth where everybody talks but never says anything. And like, oh my God, I think I just looked at the pictures the first time I read this because this is awful. How did I ever like this? And
the pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pictures.
So I have a little confession to make. This you see in front of us is a page that Chris Lawton, my co-writer, and I did back in 2006 on our little webcomic. And we this is a parlor room scene, so we thought we'd use a similar device to that horrible page. This is going up on Webtoons. Several years later, I looked back through it and I was like, this is terrible. So this story is going up on Webtoons. We're colorizing all of it right now, and I'm redoing this page. And this page will be at least 2 pages when it's finished. It's the dialogue's being trimmed. I'm adding new art to it, and so I have to share this because that other X-Men page is so terrible.
There's a piece of advice that Bill Williams, if he's still listening, that he gave Mark and I. He said that the problem with writers is that they do a lot of research and they have a lot of thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like they're shortchanging the reader by not putting all those thoughts on the page. And he's like, you always have to prune that, because you just have to remember, yeah, it sucked that you have to do all that research and accumulate all of that knowledge, but does the reader want to like pay attention to that stuff? And that's why if you look at Bill's scripts, they tend to be pretty they're very well punctuated, if that makes any sense, you know, not really exposition heavy.
It's more like a Hemingway, I guess. Grant Morrison is a writer who does a lot of research, but then he loves to prove to you that he did a lot of reading.
Oh, and
I have never read anything by Morrison. I've hated everything I've read.
Either, yeah.
Same thing with Neil Gaiman.
I kind of feel like I learned that lesson the hard way. I mean, with Black Ops Volume 1, you know, I did a lot of research on the North Korean nuclear launch sites, on the different types of nuclear missile warhead guidance systems. And I put a lot of what I did into the narrative, the dossier narration of Black Ops 1, because I thought it was being written as a military file, you know, a case file. It's like, okay, so I put that in the dossier narration to make it sound more authentic. But I go back and reread it like, yeah, that's actually just really boring, though. I think it's just too many words. And so I stopped doing that by Volume 2, and then Volume 3, we dropped the dossier narration completely. But yeah, that's just a learning thing. Like I did it once and then I read it like, yeah, it doesn't need that. And then we stopped. But, you know, then you get Grant Morrison and he's like, I just read an entire book on thermodynamics, so I'm going to make sure you know I read an entire book on thermodynamics.
Yeah, exactly.
And he puts it in the whole comic, and it's awful.
Yep. He does that.
It's true.
And it's to me it shows it kind of shows kind of an inferiority complex, because if you're smart, you don't need to inform people that you are. It'll just come out naturally. So the fact that he has to constantly basically prove to the reader, look how smart I am. It's like, yeah, you clearly don't think you're that smart then, because you feel the need to like it's the classic, you know, overcompensating with a big car. It's overcompensating with a lot of.
If you're in charge, you never have to tell anybody that you're in charge. Is the thing.
That's
true.
It's
just be confident, and then it speaks for itself. But if you're a good writer, you shouldn't have to tell people that.
I think that's the difference between Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that actually goes back to a piece of life advice I give people all the time. I said, if you're at a place and you feel uncomfortable, just pretend like you belong there, and you will fool everyone.
Yeah.
If you're somewhere you're not sure you're supposed to be, just act like you're supposed to be there and everyone will believe you. That's almost always the case. So, well, guys, I got to sign out for the reals, even though it took me 15 minutes to get back into the show. I gotta cut it here. I have a thing I got to go do quick. So,
alrighty. Yeah, I got to go to work tomorrow morning anyways.
So before we leave, I'm going to let Twitless share his little thing.
Yay! I got a shill. I finally got my thing up on Amazon Kindle like a civilized human being. Kindle edition of Adventures of Omega Girl. This is Supergirl meets.
You caught yourself.
I was just trolling. Okay.
It's Omega meets Girl.
Yeah. Girl meets world. No, so this is my classic love letter to superhero comics and even to superhero gaming. If anyone remembers City of Heroes, I loved the storytelling and world of that game. And this has nothing to do really with the game. It's just inspired by some of the adventures that I had in it. But yeah, classic superhero who tries to redeem the villains that she fights, kind of a beacon of hope character. And I crammed 4 stories into 24 pages. If you want adventure fast and quick, check out Omega Girl.
Yeah, they're efficient stories.
$2.99. How can you beat that? An Amazon Kindle.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Obviously, also check out Kamen America Volume 4. Right? You guys are on Volume 3.
4.
Volume 4 in the omnibus.
Volume 4 in the omnibus.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I put the link in the description. I'll have to make sure I do that if I haven't already. Also, want to shout out to Eevee, wherever she is. Guys, link to her store is in the description. Check it out. You've also got the link to Twitless's Amazon thingamy in the description. And if you get bored, if you're looking for something to do, you can check out the original version of my little webcomic over at forcesofgoodandevil.net. Or you can look it up, Force of Good and Evil, on Webtoons if you want to see the incomplete version that's been colorized. So I've been going through that, coloring it myself. I'm enjoying it. It's something.
Oh man, I hate coloring, Reese. This is the worst.
Yeah, I'm not very good at it, but it really makes up for like our less than stellar art. So it helps to separate the foreground and background a little more. So
so it's funny because when it comes to art. So I was talking to Tyler Carpenter the other day, and I think he's going to put that interview up on his behind his paywall in a few weeks. So I have like really unpopular opinions when it comes to art and writing. I told him like the problem is that every writer wants to write like Grant Morrison or Alan Moore, and every artist wants to draw like heavily rendered stuff. And I said that the irony is that some of the best comics I've ever read are like the comics where it's so simple. Like my favorite webcomic is Flork of Cows.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Flork's! I love Flork. Oh,
He
Flork
draws
is great.
everything in MS Paint.
He's
and
great.
There was one time he and I will talk, and he goes, "Hey, I need some advice. How do I make my art better?" I was like, "Why would you want to make your art better? Like, you're telling a perfectly good story. Like, it doesn't matter if you.
I love
if
his
you
stuff.
improve. You know, I wouldn't improve. Are you kidding me?" And some people are like, "Well, what's an example of like the pinnacle of a good comic?" I was like, Calvin and Hobbes. And they're like, no, that flies in the face of what you're saying because the drawings were so good. I was like, Calvin had dinner roll feet the whole time. Like, he literally just had jelly beans as feet. It's not the pinnacle of good art, but the reason you like it so much is because the art married to the writing. That was important. It's that synergy that creates the comic.
Mm.
It's not your high prose, and it's not your overly rendered artistic flair. It just has to marry well, you know.
But the cross hatching, Tim, the cross hatching.
There's so much detail in the cross hatching.
I am so embarrassed. I showed off your earlier campaign. I misclicked. So I was showing off your previous one, some images earlier. So very quickly,
okay.
I want to show. So our audience got to see some previous work, and then this is the current campaign. So ladies and gentlemen, check that out. Some awesome artwork and some awesome perks as well. I think you have a statue, right?
Yeah, I got those in the mail about a few days ago. They turned out amazing. They were really good.
Yeah. And those are handcrafted, right? Did I hear that?
Yeah,
That's insane.
A nice young lady out of the Ukraine, I think, who makes them all by hand and paints them by hand. And when you get them, you're just like, holy cow, these are really good.
Well, guys, we're really going to wrap for the reels. And thanks, Mark and Tim, for coming on. And we're going to close with a little something. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up here, and then we'll do a thing here.
Well, we'll shill for you guys.
Yeah, we'll shill for us.
www.patreon.com/ideal_comics.
Get that.
Oh, come on, do the thing.
Oh, what was your thing? There you go.
See? It's a thing. We did it.
That looks good.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, next week. Oh, I forgot. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I did this. So next week, we're doing the Comics Creators Club, where a bunch of creators are going to get together. We're going to read something by me, something by The Metal, and we're going to be commenting, comparing, contrasting, and giving each other tips and pointers. It's going to be me, Twitless, The Metal, #1 Marmaduke fan, and Matt Krotz. That's next week. So until then, keep reading comics. Okay. Bye.